we all know it's an art. We've all come into this industry to make art, whether it's on screen or on the stage. You know, we're all creative souls. However, it is a business, and sometimes actors forget that, and it doesn't help them, you know, in their career. There needs to be some level of pragmatism.
Hi everybody, welcome to this episode of the show. Today I'm joined by Casting Director Sharon Sorrentino. Sharon, how you doing?
I'm very well, thanks, Ash. How are you?
I'm good. Thank you for joining me. Don't worry, that's the most formal thing I do, like, good. In all of this. My VO voice came in, and that's why I don't do VOs. So let's get into the laid back part of the show. How my go-to question for everybody when I start is, we kind of touched on it before we hit record, but it is that thing of, you know, how has life, I guess, been for you in the last, 7-8 months now, professionally, and obviously personally, if you want to, you know, discuss that too, because it's a weird time.
It is a weird time. I mean, for me, they've both kind of come together because I had a baby at the end of last year. Okay. So I'm on maternity leave, which of course now has become an extended maternity leave. Sure. With, you know, with productions facing so many problems, and I have asthma.
Right.
So I also didn't want to put myself in a position where I might then be potentially bringing something home to, you know, a defenseless little one. So at the moment, I'm kind of taking it as an extended maternity, enjoying that personal side of life, and professionally taking a step back until we kind of see what's happening, until we think we know about vaccines and how production can move forward in earnest, because obviously those first productions that are happening now have got loads and loads of safeguards, but smaller productions, what's going to be happening with them, what's going to be happening with indie productions, I think we have to kind of wait a little while to see how, you know, how the dust settles, and to see if there's going to be more help, you know, from the government, which obviously we hope. Currently, yes. You know, yes. As the arts, we know we're not feeling much love there.
That's another topic. Let's not pull on that thread. We could get into.
Yeah. We'll all get angry.
I'll wear my tinfoil hat and we can go and have a conspiracy theory rant on it. I think it's true, though, to what you're saying. Like, the major productions seem to be the ones that are up and running, and a lot of them were the ones that were already sort of greenlit to film pre-lockdown anyway. Yes. Or it's like there's series 2 or 3, so they've already got some momentum under their belt. But, you know, it's mainly like Amazon, Netflix, Apple. Exactly. They've got the budget, and that's great because we do need stuff. Clearly, without the arts, people wouldn't have survived lockdown. But as you say, for an indie, I think it's a different animal. I've been talking to I had a producer on from LA who's an indie filmmaker, and he said, you know, 20-30% of their budget is now just COVID budget.
Exactly.
I don't know how an indie film can happen.
Because that's it's a huge amount. If you think on indie budgets, every penny, or in America, every cent has to be seen on camera. Like, everything has to be seen. You're cutting all of these deals, trying to get things for free or for cheaper or for this or for that, to then take 20 or 30%, which, as you say, Netflix and Amazon and, you know, BBC studios, they can afford to do that. But your indie projects are going, well, whose budget are we going to take that out of then? Are we going to take that out of costume? Are we going to take it out of casting? Are we going to take it out of catering? Because there isn't that reserve. They're usually already going, well, hang on a minute, if we just gaffer tape this thing onto that thing, that gives us another location, you know, and suddenly, it's crazy times. I'm hoping that next year, I think everyone's hopeful for next year, even though we're feeling the pinch of it now, but I'm hopeful for next year. We'll have vaccines or whatever, or you know, a way forward, but also we'll have more of an understanding of it, because people will know if they're actually getting reinfected or not. And, you know, if we just need to take temperature, you know, as where that might, I mean, obviously I'm simplifying everything, but we might be at a point next year where we've had all of these first, second, third waves, and then possibly, you know, we've found a way to live with this virus and work through it. We've just, I think, got to be patient, which is hard when we're trying to make a living, you know, for everybody.
It is. But we work in the arts, so patience kind of comes with the territory for a lot of us, I suppose, right?
Yeah, patience and tenacity, I think.
Absolutely. I agree, though. I think we need a full year's worth of data. Yeah. I used to work in the digital marketing space. I have friends who listen to the show who hate me talking about that and bringing it up. But tough, if you're listening, I'm doing it anyway. There's a point to it. But the point is, with that world, you know, if we didn't have a year's worth of data, it's very difficult to project what could happen if we want to forecast moving forward, because I don't know what's going to happen in Christmas versus spring versus summer in terms of trends. Obviously, it's a world that, you know, who cares if a company makes X amount of money? But with this, it's the same thing. It's with the pandemic, we don't know yet the data around what does it do in the winter months? What will it do, you know, January, February time? And I think once we have that full 12-month arc to look back on, we can hopefully get a little bit more of an idea of the patterns, and then, as you say, maybe have a better understanding of at what points, you know, maybe we have a window next year where it's 4 or 5 months where we know we're going to have a bit more of a clearer run to get projects done. Exactly. And then maybe wintertime, we have to be a little bit more cautious, but who knows? Who knows?
I know.
Anyway, this is again, we're still talking depressing COVID stuff. So let's push that to one side. Pretend it doesn't exist, and in Zoom world, we'll just talk about fun acting and casting stuff. So, from a casting side, maybe start at the start. I guess for you, what was your origin sort of story of getting into casting? How did you find your way into it?
Sure. I mean, casting's very niche, and I came from a performing arts background. I never acted professionally. I mean, I was in a few things when I was a student, but doing that, I think I was quite lucky. I was in a class where some of the other students were just phenomenally talented in performance. And whilst I enjoyed it, and I'm okay, I don't believe in mediocrity. And I kind of stood around watching and I was like, you know what? I'm kind of always Sharon Sorrentino playing, as opposed to really inhabiting that role. So it kind of gave me the time to kind of enjoy the rest of production, see everything else. And I became involved with an indie film that was happening in Nottingham, where I'm from. Through that, became involved in this filmmaking cooperative. And within that, I was the only girl, and there were woman. I always refer to us as girls and boys, but we're not two. I was the only woman, and there were 4 guys. And guys tend to assume, and these are broad strokes I'm saying here, but they tend to assume women are better at admin. So when it came to casting all these various things, somehow I ended up kind of having all this admin responsibility. But actually, casting is, you know, is more than admin, but there's a huge admin side to it. And in doing that and kind of being, you know, a kind of, yeah, okay, I can take that on. I'll do my project after. I'll do these first, you know. I realized that I absolutely loved the process of fitting together this jigsaw puzzle that is, you know, a script, and the audition process, and, you know, finding people you've never met, seeing what they can do, seeing what 2 different people or 3 different or 5 or 10 different people do with the same material, and then trying to work out what's the best fit for the production. I realized that actually was my calling, and eventually moved to London because, you know, in the regions there's little work on what work is filmed, because stuff is filmed all over the country, but what stuff is filmed is quite often cast from London or sometimes Manchester. And being as London was kind of the main hub, I kind of eventually thought, you know what, actually, instead of being stubborn and saying, nope, stay in Nottingham, nope, I eventually had to say, actually, I think I have to go down the big smoke and try it there. And it's very hard to get into if you don't know people in the industry already. you find that a lot of people this side of it, and the same with agents, quite often they have a family member who's already in the arts, you know, and I didn't. My sister was working in advertising at that point. She's a lecturer in advertising and design now. But my parents are restaurateurs. You know, we're not, you know,
Not in the family.
famous Sorrentinos. No, we're, you know, people who had a restaurant.
Not yet.
And we went to,
Please make that a thing, though. I think the famous
well, there are some
Sorrentinos.
famous Sorrentinos,
Yeah.
they're just not us. There's Paolo Sorrentino, the director who we're not related to. There's Mike Sorrentino.
Oh, but
From
you should so
Jersey
claim
Shore.
that you are. You should. Well, maybe not the Jersey Shore guy.
Yeah,
But
we're not related. There's a documentary maker, Bruno Sorrentino, as well. Again, not related. But yeah, so I'd moved to London and then did a lot of kind of door knocking, trying to get into the industry. Found it difficult because I didn't really understand the way in, because of course I hadn't come from that background.
and when was this? So just to timestamp it loosely.
So I moved to London in 2000.
Okay.
And I was kind of doing, you know, office temping jobs whilst trying to find my way in.
Because this is pre, I mean, it's not pre-internet, but it's pre sort of the way we use it now.
Yeah, it was certainly pre-internet for me, because I'm a bit of a Luddite. So I'm now, you know, savvy enough to use everything. But back then, you know, it was all a bit, the internet, you know, it was all a bit.
But back then it still was like, you know, mailing headshots and sending CVs in the post and all that stuff. So
exactly, yeah, it was all postal and phoning and
door to door and all that stuff.
Yes,
right.
It was a very different time then, and you have to approach the industry in the right way, and I wasn't doing so.
Okay.
And then went, yeah, this is too difficult. You know, perhaps I'll just carry on doing things that I enjoy, you know, on the side, short films, whatever. And then I went into post-production, working as a runner and then in facilities. I kind of realized at that point I was working incredibly hard, which we all do in the arts, but I was working incredibly hard for, you know, minimum wage and surviving. And then it was suggested, well, why don't you offer yourself as work experience to a casting director? I'd never thought of doing that at that point, because we weren't taught any of these things at college, because of course casting isn't a thing and I didn't know I wanted to do it, but we'd never been taught about internships or work experience, things like that, because the course was really for people who wanted to act or people who wanted to do stagecraft, so go into theatre and make sets,
right,
or do the sound design, but it was that way, you know, vocational, but not with, and this is how you do your letter, and this is, you know, there wasn't that side of it. So I wrote to Pippa Alien, who casts very big West End shows, and offered myself for free for 2 weeks. And then, you know, 3 years later, I was her senior assistant. Do you know what I mean? And she was a wonderful woman to learn from and to start working in the industry with, because she's very generous with her knowledge, and she's of a generous nature anyway. So she was great to see how auditions were with her, because of course I'd come up from this indie side where we did our best to make actors feel comfortable, but you're also dealing with your own resources, which are very limited. So she was a joy. And then from there, I kind of went and worked for an agent for a little bit to learn that side of things, and then moved into TV and film casting, which suits me more. I mean, I loved musical theatre, I love to watch it, but casting it is a much lengthier process than, say, television or film, just in terms of, you know, you come in, you sing, you come in again, you read some scenes, you come in again, you might do some dance, then you do a workshop, you come in again, and there's a whole load of you in for the same character, you come in again, and then there are the Americans coming in, who, because usually it's an American show that's in, you know, the West End, so there's all these different stages. Whereas with TV and film, it tends to, you know, be a shorter process. Even if you're working on something that takes a long time, the actual amount of times you bring those actors in is fewer. And I kind of like that turnover, and also new projects. Whereas if you're working in MT, it's quite often it's the same show, but then next year, and you're recasting, but it depends on who's leaving, and you know, those are different different criteria that you have to work with.
And I suppose from the musical theater side, like you said, a lot of it is maybe the singing, and they're coming in with a pre-planned piece to perform for you. Whereas with the screen side, you get to actually read the sides and play and act with the actors a little bit in the room. And it's a different
Absolutely.
experience for you.
Yeah, a different experience for all of us. And reading in is a joyous part of the job for most of us. I think you'd be hard pressed to find out a casting director who doesn't love the actual audition side of it. You know, telling people they didn't get the job is horrible. Arguing about money with an agent is not particularly pleasant. You know, there are other sides to the job that we might not particularly like, but being in the room with the actors and trying to bring out that performance from them is an absolute joy, because obviously we only bring people in who we think have got something to give to that part, which I think is sometimes forgotten.
I was just about to say, I like that you mentioned that, because that does seem like it's from the actor side. We don't even see it from that vantage point sometimes. And it's just a case of, but it's, you know, glass half empty sometimes. Why didn't I get the job? Why didn't I book it? All these reasons.
Yeah.
And to your point, the fact that you called us in is a sign that you like that person's work. You've seen something, you think they fit for that role, and
we believe in them.
And we can forget that sometimes a little bit.
Yeah. Of course, I mean, we can, you know, if we go for meetings and that project doesn't come our way, whatever side you're on, whether you're the actor, the director, because sometimes directors don't get gigs, you know, whether you're the casting director, we don't always get the gig, you know, we're all freelancers. It's very hard for actors because, of course, you're going for job interviews all the time, which is what an audition is. It's a job interview, which I think people outside of the industry don't understand. They just think, well, you're an actor, so you're auditioning, and they don't get that actually you're auditioning for a job.
Yeah,
that's nerve-wracking. And you go because you want to get it, and you've done all of this work to get it, and then sometimes it doesn't come to you, and the reasons might not make you happy. Sometimes, you know, sometimes they're arbitrary reasons. Sometimes it's to do with you. Usually it's not to do with you. It's to do with other, you know, other considerations.
Because it's that puzzle that you mentioned, you know, you're
yeah.
piecing together so many things that ultimately it's the actor is one piece in a huge jigsaw. And sometimes you might be a great piece, but it's a different jigsaw that you're supposed to be in, if we go with that analogy.
Yeah. And because you're building everything together, you know, everything has to fit. Otherwise a performance, and it's not about weaklings, because I don't mean that an actor might be weaker than another, because like I say, we bring people in who we believe in, but it's to do with possibly sometimes style of performance, you know, and methodology. You might have a different feel than someone else in that role, and that affects everything. It affects the tone, it affects, you know, how an audience perceives your character, their arc. All of it is it's so what's the word, it's all integral. Everything is kind of connected to each other. So actually, you know, we'll see, say for example, we saw 10 actors for a part. That's, we want to see all of them because we think they're all good. So that's, you know, a given, but they're all giving something different. And we as the casting director might think, wow, you know, Ash did this performance, that was great. I hadn't even seen that aspect of that character. So we might be saying, yeah, we should be going for Ash, that's opened up this whole idea of this other backstory. And your director might be saying, I really like that idea. Yeah, I really like that idea. And then your producer goes, yeah, that's not going to work for us, because long term, this is what, you know, if it's, say, a serial, long term, this other thing has to happen, and that take can't work with this other thing that we've got coming in. Mm-hmm. And rather than them completely change this person's, you know, performance, they've already seen someone who's brought this other flavor to it.
So that's interesting to me, because there's a part, I totally get it. There's a part that goes, you've seen one side of that person's initial interpretation of the piece, but that doesn't mean that that's the only interpretation they could give. So exactly. In your experience, how often do you get the opportunity to maybe go back and let them come and do it again, but with your notes from the producer and director to see, okay, well, we know that such and such needs to happen in the trajectory. Can they take that note on? And if they then show us what we think we need to see, we have the best of both. Or do you sometimes not get that luxury and you just have to go on first takes?
It depends. I mean, I try and avoid just first takes. So it depends on the production, it depends on the director, and it depends on the producer. But generally speaking, I try and give actors at least 2 takes so that they've had notes, so that the director and the producer can see this is an actor who can take notes, even in auditions where everybody's nervous.
Especially in auditions, I guess, right?
Well, yeah, exactly. Sorry, I said even, I meant especially, because on set, you already know that you've got the job. But in an audition, you're trying to get that job. But those nerves quite often will stop an actor, listening to the note. So sometimes you'll have an actor who's very good, who you've seen do lots of work, but they'll come in an audition and they'll give you the same read 3 times if you give them 3 chances. And you're sat there going, but I know they can get there. So you don't always have the luxury to say, well, let's do a 4th time, but can you do this? But usually, most directors are friendly, most producers are friendly. There's this idea that producers are this big bad wolf, and they're not. Most producers actually are very creative, and they like to be involved in the casting side of things. It's their endeavor as well as the director's. It's the director's vision, but it's their endeavor as well. And my experience is usually, if they're about to go into another scene, I will sometimes say, would you maybe like to see that one again? And then I'll try and slowly give them the opportunity to finish my sentence. And if they don't, then I'll suggest another type of read. And again, most directors and producers will be open to that. Obviously, if there are time constraints.
Sure.
I worked with a director last year who talked for ages before she got the actors to read. And then they only read once because there wasn't the time. But she'd given them so much information about the role and discussed it with them that in some respects, she got what she needed from that one reading, because even if they came in with a different idea of how to play it, she kind of said, this is my vision. This is what I want to get to. And it was talked about, and then on they went. I've had others do that where they've only had 1 read or they've had 2 reads, and I've said afterwards, I still think that actor could do something, and they've said, well, we're doing such and such character on whatever day, let's bring them back if they're happy to, or they can self-tape with that. And I have done that before where we're an advocate for the actors when they come in. So if we think actually we really think this actor should have had another chance just with more of a note, then we'll push for that. Obviously, we don't always get it, but
sure,
we'll push for it.
Do you sometimes, because I think that's more common than not, that, an actor comes in and they read and then you go, actually, maybe not for this, but maybe there's something else down the line or another project one day. Do you sometimes find that you brought someone in and then realize pretty quickly, my mistake, they weren't actually quite right for this, but I like them as a performer. It's just, they're apples and I need pears, but actually I've got an apple coming up later. That's a terrible analogy, but I'm keeping it.
No, but it's true. We do, we've all seen pears and thought, sugar, I'm casting apples. What do I do now? But you then go, but I really like this pear. So I'm going to remember this pear. And the next project I have with anything vaguely pear-like, I'm going to bring them in because I like what they do, and
sure.
And we like to bring in left field choices as well. So, again, if we're saying apples and pears as our analogy, we might have a director who's very clear on what apples are, but there's loads of varieties of apples. They're not all Granny Smith.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
True.
I'm loving this analogy now. I hated it about 60 seconds ago, but I let you run with it, and now it's actually got some substance.
Absolutely.
No, that all makes total sense. I think that's good to hear as well, because I know if I put myself into actor mode when I was starting out, there might be that question of, but how often do you see people that you don't know? You know, that thing that comes up of,
Yes,
do
yeah,
you have your favorites, which obviously you're going to, because that's just
sure.
life. Like, we
Yeah,
have connections with certain people, but it can feel sometimes like we're on the outside looking in. And
yeah,
so a lot of actors, I totally understand and appreciate, get a little bit edgy when nothing seems to be happening and they question, well, do I even have a shot if they don't know me? Like, how do I get on that
yeah,
radar? Will they even see me if I'm not known or repped by so and so or whatever
yeah.
it might be?
Yeah, and it's an understandable concern. You know, a few years ago, people started talking about, you know, the top 5 and the top 10 agents, and you won't get anywhere if you're not represented by them. And yes, you might see in a production, you might see a lot of the actors are with those, you know, huge well-known agencies, but it's not all of the actors. On our side, it's also not very interesting for us if it's just the same 10 people casting everything. You know, there was a time when I would turn on the TV, and whether I was on BBC or ITV, I saw the same. And I'm not going to name them because then it sounds like I don't like them, and I do.
No, no, no.
But I would see particular well-known actors, and part of me would roll my eyes because I wanted to see a different program, and I felt that I was seeing this person in this, and actually, you know, I've gone from seeing them in a comedy to now this detective show. But and not that they can't transfer, because they absolutely can, but it's just that I was a bit bored as an audience member of seeing them here, and here. Um, for me, I it's not important to me if somebody's represented or not represented. And I know it's harder if you're not represented. So I don't mean that it's the same, because you don't get as many opportunities. You don't, by very definition, if you're representing yourself, you're not sent the breakdowns.
Sure. Yeah.
Because we send them to agents.
Yeah.
We tend to only send them out for everybody if we're finding it difficult to find someone. So, you know, by nature it's harder. But I bring people in that I haven't met before all the time, not just to a first round with me. I bring them in front of directors and producers, often because I'm working on independent stuff and I don't have the luxury of doing X number of first rounds. And also, and this is where people differ. It depends on the production as well. So, you know, I want to trust that those actors are going to come in and do their best. So I don't want to do a day of seeing people just to say, yeah, come in and do exactly that same thing again for somebody else in 2 days' time. But having said that, I'm not casting a great big Hollywood blockbuster where we can only, and I've worked on studio films before, when, you know, when assisting, we have to do screening for that,
Right.
because you have very, very limited time with the director and producer. So you could only bring in, you know, a select few. And normally that's gone through a whole rigmarole of, we've seen them first, then we've said, you know, here are our favorites, and then they've gone, yeah, and narrowed that down further, and then we've brought those people in. Do you know what I mean? So there's all of these stages. But a lot of us, I would say, are quite open to seeing actors, depending on what the material is. You know, if you're an actor who's just starting out and you've not got very many credits, you're unlikely to be seen for a lead role. But you might be seen for small roles, and then you come in and, you know, you do a very good audition, you're remembered. And there has to be a trajectory, really. I think it's hard sometimes for actors who start out straight from drama school, ending up with a really big gig, you know, introducing so and so, because then it's very difficult. They haven't worked their way up. They don't really know where they are within the industry, because you don't always go from this great big role here to then continuing on that trajectory. You might have done this, but then there might be nothing for a year or two. You might have to go and do this role or this project. And so I think if you've kind of been doing this and kind of, you know, working up, I think you have a more grounded
There's
approach.
different
And
perspective, right? Different perspective
yeah,
on
yeah,
it.
absolutely.
And
I
there's
think it's
less
hard.
pressure. You come out of
Yes.
drama school, you get a huge role. It's awesome, no doubt about it. And you'd be foolish not to take it.
Oh,
But
no.
without the right inner circle around you, the perspective, I suppose, could get lost. And then that's why I guess so many child actors, 9 times out of 10, do sort of flitter out, because
Yeah.
it's so much pressure from a young age, but also I do think there's a lot to be said for just life experience. We
Mm,
talk a lot about, the label of I'm an actor as a label, but you're a person first. And I think
oh,
certain things in your life and things that you do and experiences you have and places you go enrich you as a person, which inform your artistry. And sometimes you just, like a wine, mature a bit with age and become better as a performer because you've had those experiences. And maybe the knockbacks also give you the perspective of, yeah, I'd have liked to have got that major show when I was 21, but
yeah,
would I have appreciated it as much if I,
yeah.
who knows?
And would you have made the same choices on various other things that have happened since? Perhaps that gig was meant to be somebody else's. If you view things in
Do you do
those
you
kind of.
do you view it with that kind of perspective? This idea of sort of it's just sometimes it's just the right thing for the right person at the right time. It's very
Yeah,
alchemical some ways.
yeah, I think sometimes it is, because I think sometimes, and it goes for all of us in every aspect of life. You can be stood right next to opportunity and waving your flag, and it doesn't come to you, and it's not because you've done
Blinkers on.
anything wrong.
Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes it was just that opportunity must have been meant for somebody else because you were doing your best. So I think sometimes there's a certain element of that.
And from an actor's side, I mean, a through line that has come from a lot of the casting professionals I've spoken to is the idea of, the right person. It's a feeling, right? It's an essence, it's a vibe, call it what we want to call it, but that's not very tangible, which
Yeah,
obviously from an actor's side can be quite frustrating because there is a logical part of our brain that's formulaic and we're like, just like, tell me what to do.
of
But
course.
it's not that, like, it's not that kind of
Yeah.
industry. I'm not going to ask you, obviously, how could someone come in and try and sort of mold and manipulate that, because you can't. But in your experience, what do you just know when they immediately come in? What does that vibe or essence sort of
Um,
feel like for you?
it it's not necessary. I mean, sometimes the moment somebody comes in, they bring in such self-assurance and they really want that role that they project that, and then you kind of receive that the energy for at the risk of sounding like a hippie, but
Sound like a
but
hippie yourself then.
sometimes you do get that, and like you say, you can't really, you can't measure it. It's not something tangible. You can't kind of go, oh, that's it, and put a litmus paper out there and see what number it is, but what color it goes rather. But I would say, in terms of getting to that point, there are certain things as an actor that you can do to help yourself. Now, in terms of chemistry is chemistry, and you actually can't fake chemistry because we've seen it. You see it. You see some chemistry of people who have performed together on camera who didn't actually like each other but had such amazing chemistry, and it's just, that is a chemical thing. But in terms of what you can do to up your chances, you can prepare. So the first thing you have to do is, if you're given a full script, read it all. The amount of times, we have people come in and they've only read their own scenes in isolation, and that doesn't give you an overview. And or they skim read and they ignore the stage directions. And I sometimes do bits of teaching for drama schools here and there on acting technique, and I will often not give them any backstory. So I'll give them scenes and I pair them up as though they're at recall stages. Although sometimes actually when I audition, I pair people up anyway, because you get to see more people and see them read with another actor instead of me, and blah, blah, blah. But I won't tell them the backstory. I'll let them read it with the assumptions they've made.
Mm-hmm.
And one of them is a particular piece. And I've gone on a kind of tangent, but I'll come back to that point.
Right.
But
Yeah.
The reason it's to do with preparation is because I give them a scene where it reads as though they're ex-lovers. So that's how everybody plays it, whereas actually they're brother and sister.
I was just going to say they're brother and sister or something.
Yeah. And when the actors are told this, well, actually, I'll say to them, what do you think their relationship is? And they're like, well, I think they were dating when they were 16, 17, or they've got all of this backstory. And I'm like, actually, no, they're brother and sister.
Are the clues of that in the sort of sides anywhere, or as you say, does it? So okay, but
No,
you'd need to read the full thing to know.
exactly, if you
Sure.
got it. And so that's why I use that piece, because I'm saying, if you had been given the full script but you'd only skimmed everything else and gone to your scenes that you were told to prepare, you wouldn't know the relationship.
It's a
And
great way
knowing,
of teaching the lesson, because people who do that class are going to remember it, and it's always going to be in their mind just because they've
yeah,
experienced, almost
exactly.
like
And
getting caught out by you a little bit in a
yeah,
good way.
a little bit. And it's not meant to be mean, it's just meant to kind of show that actually stage directions are as important as dialogue, because there can be a look between two people that undermines the dialogue. So you could have, whatever the situation is, you can have people who are in a relationship, but there's an affair going on. Or you could have somebody who's blackmailing somebody else. You can have somebody who's a suspect in a murder, but actually, him and the copper, they're in cahoots. And a look can tell you an awful lot that if you haven't read it, you don't know. So read the full script if you get it. In fact, after my tangent.
Yeah.
Including the stage direction. So you've got this view of the whole piece, and from that your character and their arc and where they belong in the story, even if they're a smaller character, because quite often people, again, they'll just read their own if they're coming in for a character who's only in 2 scenes. Why read the entire thing? Why do I need that context? Because you always need context. You always need context. Obviously there are, if you're playing a baggage handler and actually the whole thing is not about when these people went on holiday, then yes, there's less context for that. That's just,
Sure.
But usually if we're bringing you in to see what you can do, there's a reason for that.
But it's
And
still
we need
knowing
to know what
where
to
in
do
the
with it.
story that fits, even if it's a
Yeah.
one scene where you've got 2 lines. If you know you're on page 75 in a film versus page 5, it tells you if you're in act 1 or act 2 or act 3.
Yes.
And then you can at least know, I mean, those roles are just to move the story along, but they still have a purpose or they wouldn't be in the script, right?
Exactly.
And it's, I guess, just knowing, oh, am I involved in transitioning this protagonist into act 3, and is that what my one line does, or
Yeah.
something along those lines?
Yeah. I mean, sometimes, if it's one line, we might not actually send you the whole script, because that's the other side of it. If it's just one line and we send you a whole script, sometimes people fixate on all the other details. But generally speaking, if we're bringing you in and we're giving you a decent chunk of material to prepare, you want to know context of everything. And so that's just kind of script side. And I would say make some choices about it. Sometimes it's hard to glean from the script, especially if it's an episode of something with 8 episodes, for example, or 10 episodes, or if it's the first episode. Quite often you're setting up so many characters and so many stories, if it's an ensemble piece, that as an actor you might think, I've just got nothing to go on here. This character doesn't speak to me, and they might not speak to you until episode 4. Hopefully we've sent you both EP1 and EP4. But usually if you can't glean that much from the script, we normally send you quite a detailed character description. Read the description.
Read everything, basically. You're a
Read
detective.
everything. Yeah. And research who you're meeting, which I think sometimes people forget to do, understandably, because they've got all this prep to do on their part. But know who you're meeting, know the sort of work they do, know who the director is, so that way you get an idea of what they want, the kind of flavors that they look for in performance. And be brave with your choices. If you're coming in for a bad guy, what kind of bad guy is he or she? Because there's many different types of bad guy, and actually somebody who's calculating is scarier than someone who's a thug. I mean, not when you're about to be beaten up, but in the long term,
But the way that translates over
Exactly. So it's about choices. Also, if you're bringing in if the role you're coming in for, say, is, let's say they're like a player romantically, they're a player, but why are they a player? Have they been hurt in the past? Did they grow up with little or no affection? Is this the way, you know, they express themselves because of that? Have they been abused as a child? You know, all these things. I'm just picking at things here, but there are lots of reasons behind people's behaviour. And if you make a choice about it as an actor and bring that in, even if it's not the choice we're looking for, we'll sit there and go, wow, that was an interesting choice. That was great. And sometimes, you know, I've seen it many times where actors have done that. They've come in with this really bold choice and the director has gone, that, I didn't even know that's what I wanted, but that's what I want. And then like, yeah, cancel everybody else today. Like, no. But,
and the key thing with those choices is, though, using whatever information is available in the script and
yes,
everything else. Because you can make one of the choices you mentioned, but if it doesn't align with the authenticity of the story, then you fill in the blanks based on the clues you've been given, as opposed to just deciding, I think I'm going to play this person like he's schizophrenic.
Oh, yeah.
But I think sometimes as an actor, we hear make a choice and we don't compute what that means, because we hear it so much. Make a choice, make a bold choice, make a choice.
Yeah.
It's good to now just clarify, well, what does that actually mean?
It means, glean from the script. And then if you're unsure, if you're looking at the script and going, there's not enough, then I personally would say, decide, fill in that blank, because you can always come in and say, I've got this particular idea of this character. Shall I offer that? And if it's not what you want, just tell me. And I can do it again. And I've had that plenty of times where people have come in and say, oh, I wasn't quite sure where this character was going. I've got this idea. And then, you know, you let them go with it. And sometimes, like I say, you're like, wow, that was great. And sometimes you think that's really not where this is going. That's not the director's vision. It's an interesting take, but it's not the director's vision. And so we'll say, I really like that idea. However, where this is going, what the vision is this direction. So can we try that again, but with blah, blah, and blah, you know? And it doesn't mean that the actor was wrong, because they made a choice based on what wasn't there, you know.
Awesome. All right, let me bring in, I just see people in the waiting room and they're probably emailing me going, you told me I was going to be here, let's see. So I'm gonna.
And Sharon just talks and talks.
Well, it's probably more just on me for not keeping on top of my time. My quarter German side would be going nuts at me for that. Let me bring in Sean, who I believe is a fresh graduate. I believe.
Okay.
And I'll let him have a good chat with you.
Sure. Hello, Sean.
Hey, Sean.
Hello. Can you hear me?
I can indeed. Hello.
Hello. Nice to meet you, Sharon. Thanks for having me, Ashley.
Nice to meet you, man. Sorry for the wait. We're having a good old chit chat. Anyway,
can you hear me?
We can indeed. Maybe a bit of a lag. I'm going to shut up. I'm going to let you have 5 minutes with Sharon just to have a chat and ask away whatever questions you have.
Okay. Hi, Sharon. Nice to meet you.
Hi. Yes, and you.
Yeah, I've got a few questions. I've read your book, by the way. I've started reading your book. It's really, so far, really useful. Like, really a well-rounded, honest, unbiased opinion of the industry. So thanks for that, I suppose.
Thank you.
Yeah, I've got some questions. So I've just graduated from drama school this year, and being a graduate, I wondered if you just had any advice for a recent graduate actor, maybe obviously with the current climate and all that.
Yeah, well, with the current climate, it's difficult. Obviously, with showcases, it's been hard. Have you got representation already, or are you currently representing yourself?
I got an agent. I got representation.
Oh, fantastic. Okay, great, because that makes your kind of start in the industry a lot easier for you, because they're basically your ambassador. So they've what's the word? They've shown kind of a seal of approval for you, which makes it easier for us. Because we deal with agents, you know, all the time on the projects that we deal with. I won't ask who it is, because, you know, that's your relationship with them, and I trust that they're a good agent. Generally speaking, when an agent has taken on some new grads, they quite often will email out to casting directors that they often work with, and kind of say, you know, I've just taken on, you know, here's Sean, I've just taken him on, you know, just finished training at blah, you know, a particular skill set in blah, native accent is blah, you know, love you to see him for, you know.
Great at blah.
Blah's my word for everything.
Okay.
But so they will quite often, you know, do this email around to introduce you, because, you know, not all of us get to the showcases, not because we don't want to go, but quite often they're on a day where we're auditioning, so we can't be there. This year is obviously quite difficult because of the pandemic. It's been difficult for everybody, you know, studying anything, but especially something where you need people to see what you can do. Where you studied, did they make a show reel? So did you do?
We were, well, I went to Manchester School of Theatre, and we were one of the fortunate ones to get our showcase in Manchester and London done just before it all happened. So we were very fortunate. And then even earlier in the year, we recorded a show reel. So I've got some footage together and stuff like that.
Good, because I was going to say that's one of the key elements that you need. For us, on the casting side, we see so many actors for so many things, and even before we decide to bring people in, you know, we're always looking through Spotlight. We look at the new grads, depending obviously on what the roles are. If we're looking for 2 old age pensioners, we're unlikely to look at the new grads, but, you know, depending on roles, we will, you know, look through the grads. And having that show reel gives us a chance to see what you can do in, you know, in a limited time. So I mean, I think ideally they should be around 3 minutes, because if we're looking, say for example, we're looking for, you know, a young northern lad for this particular role, then obviously we're gonna think of people that we've met already, because that's the first thing we will do, of course, because we're also quite loyal in the same way that directors are loyal to, you know, actors they've worked with. So we'll think, oh, who have I already seen? Who do I already know that would be a fit? And then you kind of got that idea in your head. And then we'll be looking at new grads. We will search on Spotlight, so we'll see people coming up. And if you've got that show reel already, it means that we can have a little look with no obligation to bring people in. So we can see what they can do, what they feel like, you know, the tone and flavour of their performance, how they feel on camera, because some actors are wonderful on stage, but it doesn't translate on camera, you know, and vice versa. So we kind of have a little look at that. So the fact you've got one already stands you in good stead. I would say because we're in a pandemic year, it's obviously harder. There's less stuff being produced, a lot less. And that in itself has a knock-on effect. So if there's less being made, those producers are more nervous about where their money is going. And often that translates to, can we have a cast mainly of people we already know? Just in a kind of, in a brutally honest kind of observation, that's what this pandemic is doing. However, it depends on the roles, you know, and a lot of casting directors and producers sometimes, and certainly directors, like to find new talent. So there is that other side to it. I would say what you'll need to do is a mail out, but you have to time it well. And I would suggest maybe now isn't the time to do the mail out. So now is maybe the time to be reading scripts and plays whilst you're not in acting work, because the more you've read, the more of an idea of how you would perform a role comes to you. And this is the time when we can all be doing that. I think reading scripts and plays is incredibly important for actors. Also, taping some scenes yourself. So, you know, finding something, reading the full script, and then taping more. They were already becoming more and more a part of the industry in the last few years, but especially now where it's not necessarily always applicable for us to bring people in to meet in person. You want to be able to do a good self-tape. So the more practice you've had at that, the better your chances are, because, you know, doing a self-tape, if you've not been able to get in and meet someone and have that face-to-face, you know, meeting, there's a, as fellow humans, an understanding then and a feeling that we get about other individuals when we meet them in person that's harder over the internet. And it's harder just from a tape. But if you're getting more and more practice, so choose some scenes, film them, have a look back, and be brutally honest with yourself as to what you think really worked. Because when you do get those roles and those auditions that are self-tapes, which most will be at the moment, a lot of actors, especially young actors, only tape it once and then send it in. And actually, that might not be your best take. That might really have been your rehearsal.
Yeah, I think I'm the opposite end. I think most of my time is I have an hour to like just settle my mind and then watch back, and then I'm just. It always happens. You've got like 5 choices, and then you do like one thing from each of them, and then you just.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And that's always going to happen because you're going to be a perfectionist. It's the nature of our industry. Everybody creative is a perfectionist. So, you know, film them and try them with different intentions, you know, so make different choices and see how that feels. So you can get a real understanding about how the camera understands you and what you're giving to it, especially if you want a career that, you know, has time on screen as well as in theatre. With theatre, it's a bit more difficult at the moment, you know, because they're all dark, you know, so it's very difficult. There's a few things happening here and there, but it's few and far between, and it's mainly stuff like, you know, Alan Bennett's Talking Heads, which are just the one person, you know, and that's always going to be somebody very famous because they can only fit a few people in the audience. So during a pandemic, we're in a harder time at the moment in terms of what we could do, but I think certainly taping yourself, doing as many things as you can, reading as much as you can, because also when we found our way out of the pandemic, if you've been reading lots of scripts and lots of plays and you get an audition where you're told to bring in, because sometimes for theatre pieces you might be told to bring in 2 monologues, instead of scrambling when you get that audition call, you already know, because you've got this you know, wealth of knowledge of scripts up there, and try and kind of, you may already have done this at drama school, but I would say have a couple up your sleeves that you can always do, and make sure that they are appropriate to your age range. I've seen quite a few younger performers who've come in trying to do King Lear. It's like, no, don't do it, you know.
Yeah. But yeah.
So yeah, you know, kind of choose appropriately, but practice on those things, because in terms of getting out there and meeting people, it's difficult at the moment, and I can't see that changing until at least next year, when we've got more safety measures in place and we understand more about the long-term effect of the virus. I think all you can be doing is preparation. There's no harm in doing a mail out. Or if you're going to do a mail out, always do them individually. Don't do a round robin that goes to everybody with a dear sir or madam, because we're less inclined to read them. Not because we're grand, but because we get a lot of emails in.
In terms of mail out, this is something else I wanted to ask. So would you think it would be a good idea for that mail out to be just an introductory email, or would you wait to have something to show?
Well, because at the moment there's less going on, I think you can afford to do an introductory one, you know, and you're kind of saying, hi, I've just graduated, you know, new to the industry, but these are my skills. This is what I can offer you. I'd love to come in and read for you, you know, when you have a suitable project. And it can be that succinct, and then always attach a link to your Spotlight CV. Don't just write in the pin number, do a link. You can send yourself from Spotlight your CV, and then it shows you the link. You just copy and paste it in, because you always want to make everything as easy as you can if you're doing mail outs to casting directors. Even if, you know, you've got an agent, but say for example you didn't have one and you were sending to agents, you would be doing the same thing. Or if you're sending it to directors, you know, if there's a director you particularly want to work with, there's no harm in saying, I love your work, I particularly liked whatever the show was, you know. and sending them your details, because we do get that. We get directors that we're working with saying, oh, this actor emailed me, I really like the look of them. Can you remember them for something? So not even that they've got anything for them right now. They're just saying, I really liked this, what this performer did. Can you remember them for something in the future? Because, you know, they're off thinking about other things, the vision of their script, you know.
Saying that to the casting director to remember them.
Yeah, so they'll do that. They'll say that to casting directors that they work with often, you know, because we've built up relationships based on trust, you know, so they trust our taste in actors, we trust their taste in actors. So, you know, it's like that. And most of us as well, I have, you know, in my email, I have a folder for actors who have emailed me where I didn't have anything for them, but I really liked what they did. I liked their show reel, or I thought their, you know, the sort of theatre they'd done was particularly interesting. And whenever I'm doing a new project, I go in and have a little look in my folder to see if there's anybody that I've forgotten, because of course I haven't met them. So they're not in the same part of my brain as the people that I've met, who will automatically, we're a bit like Rain Man casting directors. So we kind of, you know, it's all hovering up here, and we kind of, you know, color code everything, you know, counting cards and toothpicks as they fall on the floor. But, you know, we're counting actors instead. But if you've not met someone, they're not in the same space. So, you know, and I'm sure I'm not the only person that does that. I'm sure lots of other casting directors go, you know, right, I've got this new project. Let me just have a look in my remember for later file, you know. And that's when to do it. And don't be upset if you don't get any replies. Doesn't mean people haven't read them. I don't reply to everything, but I know from conversations that I reply to more than a lot of other people do. And the reason we don't reply to everybody is we don't physically have time, because we get a lot of these emails. And if you're working on a project, you quite often just ignore them until after, because you're kind of in the middle of everything. You know, the opposite can be said. Sometimes somebody emails you just at the right time, like, aha, I've got this role I'm doing right now. This guy looks great for it. Let's bring in Sean, you know. But I would say, you know, if you don't get a response, don't be offended. Most of us read everything that's sent to us, because we need to find talent all the time. And we don't want to be casting the same 5 faces in everything. Because actually, if we did that, we wouldn't be very good at our job and we wouldn't last very long. You know, if somebody sees the last 10 projects that we cast and it's always the same actors, then we're a closed door, and we're not very interesting as a casting director. So, you know, you might find that we have people crop up again because we've worked with them, but it's not that we're only kind of going, yeah, these are the actors I like to work with. We are usually very, very open to new actors. So send out a mail out with a link to your spotlight, tapes and scenes at home with different intentions. Do you sing? Just no, because I wasn't sure, because obviously different courses.
I can hold a tune, but I wouldn't market myself as a singer.
Oh, because this
no,
is the show,
then,
Sean,
yeah.
where I ask you to sing. So this is the segment where you do your best.
You didn't tell me this in the email, Ashley. You didn't say this. It's not fair.
This is the point.
Question.
I like the improvisational part of it. Quick one, Sean. Have you heard of Manuel Piro's self-tape challenge? Have you heard of the acting habit? No.
Oh, is it? Go on.
The acting habit is what he calls it, but it's run by Manuel Piro, who's a casting director. And so the main one is this 21-day self-tape challenge, where literally for 21 days, every day, he sends you a piece at 7 p.m. and then you have 24 hours to learn it, self-tape it at home, and then you put it up. And the good thing is he gives feedback every day, but also the other people on the course get to see and comment on the piece too. So you get other people's input. And it's super interesting to see how one piece can be interpreted differently by different people. So if you're looking for something to do, that might be one to check out just from the self-taping side. I should ask Manuel to give me commission or something for referring people. No, but I've done it. I think it is really good. And then once you've done his course, he brings in casting directors to do 5-day little workshops too. So it's just a good way to keep the self-tape muscle
Yeah, I know
exercised.
actors who've done it as well, actually, you know, coming on from what you're saying, Ash, who have said that they found it invaluable and really, really helpful.
Well, because self-taping is a different thing to auditioning in the room. It's a different sort of skill set.
Absolutely.
And how do you train for that unless you get a self-tape or you practice with friends, which is still doable, but he's kind of done the hard work for you and made the framework and found the scripts. So maybe one to check out if you haven't.
Yeah, definitely. And get the feedback as well.
Absolutely.
That's a good opportunity. I'll look into it.
Yeah. Feedback's always helpful, I think, as well. Just on that, in terms of when we audition, a lot of casting directors don't give specific individual feedback because they are working on, you know, lots and lots of projects. I always give feedback. It might not be immediate, because if you're, you know, if you're in amongst all of everything that you're doing, it's you don't necessarily have the time, but I give it later because I think it's helpful to actors to know how they've come across and what their scene did. But if you are getting feedback, you know, coming back to Manuel's course, as an actor, it can sometimes be difficult to hear that feedback. So you have to hear it with as much openness as you can, because you might think you did this scene in a particular way, and that what came across was, you know, these emotions and these feelings and these intentions, and what your audience might feel might be different. So just in terms of feedback, always don't take it personally that if you get anywhere you think, oh, but that's not what I was doing, don't take it personally, because nothing will ever be done as a personal comment to you as a human being. But they might be saying, this is how it's coming across, and that's not what the intention of the scene was meant to be. Do you know what I mean? So just don't take personally. Try and listen to those notes, or, you know, when you read them, but, you know, when you say in your head, try and take them on as a constructive, sorry, put my teeth in, constructive criticism. If it is that, they might just come back and go, wow, that was amazing. But usually people will come back with feedback and go, you know, yes, I thought this element was good and this element was good, but with this element you need to work on whatever the thing is. I'll try not to say blah, because we know that I say blah a lot. But feedback is often not common for actors. So when you do get some, you know, try to make the best of it. Oh, I think you've frozen.
I think you've frozen on my side too, but we can still hear you. Oh, you're back.
You've frozen. No, you're back. It's telling me that my internet connection is unstable. Great. Thanks, Virgin.
It's all good. It's all back. Cool. Do you have another question, Sean? Or
yeah, if I've got time for just one more.
Go for it. Go for it.
I mean, one of them was about, because you already mentioned about contacting actual directors, and you've answered that one. Because I mean, like, I love Shane Meadows' work, and yeah, I'll just have to try and find his email. That's what I've got to do next.
Have a look on IMDb. Most things you can find on IMDb, and you can, you know, look to see if those directors have their own website. A lot of directors have their own website, and then there's usually there's a contact page. So either it gives you an email address, or it's like a contact form. So if it's only a contact form because they don't want to give out their email address, you can still introduce yourself, and you can put the link to your spotlight in amongst, you know, your message to them, so they've got the chance. Make sure, well, you're on Spotlight, so you've got your agent's contact details, but if you're wanting a personal response from someone, make sure, and it's a contact form, make sure they can get your email address as well.
Oh yeah, but the last one, if I've got time, was just if an actor does, and when they've come in the room, if they do, what is it what is it that excites you and grabs your attention?
So for me, and it's quite hard to kind of put it into words, because Ash and I were talking about this before, about how, you know, there's a feeling and there's this. So for me, obviously the energy they bring into the room, and that's comprised of their self-belief, their confidence, never arrogance, but their confidence and their self-assurance, the fact that they want the part. These things all come together so that when somebody comes in, that they deliver. And also what helps set that up is the preparation. So if they come in and they've already learned the part, because, you know, we usually say, you know, yeah, just be familiar with the script. And theatre and screen is different. With theatre, people don't really mind as much you having the script in your hands as you kind of walk around on stage. And they want you to be open to suggestion. With camera, we tend to prefer it if you've actually learned it, while still being open to suggestion. And that can be difficult for actors, because if you've learned it to a point where your perception of that character is rigid, it can then be difficult to then do another reading with a different set of intentions. So I would say learn it, but if you're given notes, repeat them in your own head, because sometimes it's nerves that stop us. So if someone says, I really like that, but actually can we bring it down? Can we make it more conversational? Or if it's an argument, perhaps don't start it here. Start it here so you've got somewhere to go, because often people will do an argument and they come in and they're at fever pitch the whole way, and most arguments don't do that in real life. You know, quite often you laugh in an argument as well in real life, because you realize you're both being very silly, but you're seeing red at that point, you know. But those things all come together to make us sit there and go, that's the person. You know, that you have to have done the preparation in order for that confidence to come through. Because if you're winging it, we can usually spot it. We can spot bluff, you know, a mile off. And you know, being able to talk about it, if you actually really want to do that particular job, you know, that role, that production, being able to talk about it. You don't necessarily have to have questions. Sometimes we'll say, oh, do you have any questions? Just because we're trying to put you at ease, and you might have a question that needs answering. But you don't have to go, oh God, I didn't know, I haven't got a question, let me think of one. You know, it's not a test. But being able to talk around it and saying why it's of interest to you, I think can help as well. And it can go towards us thinking, yeah, this is the person, they've really understood what the script is. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Being massively prepped, having maybe a connection you can express to the actual role and why specifically that one you're going for, and also being available to direction. That's brilliant advice.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Welcome.
We've given you lots of homework, Sean. You have loads of homework now, Sean.
I know, I've got notes to take.
Absolutely.
I've got to sing now.
Yeah. I mean, I won't make you sing on this, but if you want to send me a video clip of the singing later, that's cool. I'll tweet it out.
Different intentions, like yeah.
Oh, you actually gave us a little tune on that note.
No, I think my time here is done. Thank you very much.
Fair enough. Thanks for joining. Appreciate you
Thank you
coming
for having
on.
me.
My pleasure.
Nice to meet you, Sharon. Thanks for your advice.
Oh, welcome.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye, Sean. First time I've got someone to kind of sing on this thing.
That's wonderful.
I might make it a trend. As long as it ain't me singing, then we're all good. Let me, I believe, if I can see the waiting room, there's Emma waiting. Let me bring in Emma. Same deal. She'll get have a chat with you, and then when she's done, we'll kind of find a nice way to circle off the conversation and button it up and finish up. So poor Emma's been waiting for a while. I hope she's still there. Or not. Is that right? Yes, it has worked. What is that on that picture? Hello. What was that in your picture? Is that like a falcon?
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, I don't know birds, but I think it was something like that. Yeah,
Well,
it was at a friend's wedding.
It wasn't a pigeon, put it that way.
No, it was quite big. Yeah.
Anyway, hello. I'm going to shut up.
Hello.
Meet Sharon, and over to you to have a nice little chat with her. I'm going to keep quiet.
Oh,
Okay.
hi. Nice to
Hi,
meet
Emma, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thank you. Very good.
I don't know if you've already been asked this question.
Sure,
I feel like it might be a question that people ask quite a lot. But you know, when you get loads of submissions, so you'll put out a breakdown and you'll get loads and loads of submissions from agents and actors and all that. What is it about someone's submission or headshot? I don't even know what it is really, but what would make you pick them over someone else to come in for an audition, if that makes sense? Sure.
I think for me, quite often, if we're working on something and we've got loads of submissions, we end up, when you look at, from our side, when we look at Spotlight, we see about 50 submissions per character per page when we're looking down. So it's a thumbnail of their headshot, and then it'll say their agent details, and they're all automatically sorted into which role it is. There's a little box for if people want to make a comment. You know, so say for example we were searching for a character that has a specific skill, then people might want to say something. Often agents would just say, please see my actor so and so for this role. But you know, if we're looking for people who are based in a particular area, again, then that's good to use the comment box. But I think for all of us on that first moment, it's the headshot, because we need to see the headshot before we open it, the CV. So the headshot has to say something to us. So the first thing I always say to actors about their headshots is always looking at the camera and thinking something. And a couple of years ago, I noticed that a lot of headshots had become portraits, and that's different. Portraiture is very different to a good headshot. A portrait is a beautiful picture of you.
Yeah.
It doesn't actually tell me anything about you as an actor. A headshot is completely different.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? So
yeah,
I saw a lot of these where you kind of had people staring off
wistfully. Yeah.
Yes, and they look like ballerinas. They're like beautifully posed, beautifully lit ballerinas. But it didn't tell me something. Whereas an actor looking at the camera, thinking about something, I'm immediately engaged, because as humans, when we talk to people, we want to talk to their eyes, don't we? We want to feel a connection, and we don't want those eyes to be blank. So the actor has to be thinking about something. They also need to be at ease in front of the camera. So that usually requires a photographer who's good at making you feel at ease, rather than your mate taking your photo, you know, in your back garden, which people might have to do because of financial concerns to begin with. But then I would say once you have a bit of money, get an actual photographer to do your headshots if you don't have one, you know, already. Because that's the first thing that makes us go, oh, I'm gonna look at her, let's see what this Emma's all about, you know. And then we open up the CV, we'll have a look at your credits, and sometimes, you know, it's the credits where we might go, wow, that's a whole load of interesting choices. If we for example know the plays, if they're plays, or if they're, you know, indie films that we might have seen, or great big films, or TV that we know, we might say, oh, I like these choices. And that automatically says that other people like your work.
Okay.
And then if you've got a show reel, we'll go and have a look at your show reel, because that shows us your relationship to the camera. If we're casting screen, I tend to work primarily on screen. I do, you know, odd bits of theatre here and there as well, but primarily screen. So the show reel is very, very important. Okay. Ideally no more than about 3 minutes, because if you have a 5-6 minute show reel, people won't watch it. They won't watch the end of it. And so you might actually have your best work at the end of it, and they haven't got time to watch it. A lot of people will only watch like 90 seconds worth. I can't glean enough from 90 seconds, but I might go back and forth. If a scene is too long, I might go, oh, this is a long scene, and I might cut to the next one, because I might feel that I've got enough information about your performance if I'm on a very, very busy day on a tight schedule. So those things are important. I would also say having the correct skill set and age range and stuff like that, because you could be missed. So your age, are you represented, or are you representing yourself at the moment?
Yeah, I have an agent, Right.
So your agent will be representing you for stuff that you're the appropriate age range for anyway. It's not about knowing your real age. We're not actually allowed to ask that. You don't have to put it on Spotlight. There are anti-discrimination laws that mean we're not allowed to ask you how old you are. In commercials, we can ask if you're above 25, because you can't be
licensing and alcohol.
Well, for alcohol and gambling, things like that, you have to be over 25. So, you know, they might ask that, but they shouldn't be saying how old are you. But those are the things that are gonna make us want to look at you. First and foremost is your headshot, because that's what makes us open everything else. And then on your show reel, I would say, depending on the sort of work you've done, if you've got, you know, a decent selection to choose from. Choose roles that are different from each other.
Okay.
Because your show reel is where you show that you're versatile and what you can do, so that someone can go, oh, you know, she's great in these dramatic pieces. Oh, but look, here's some comedy or whatever. Or, you know, I completely believed her as the brain surgeon, but look, here she is as a farmer. That's completely different, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
And if you specialize in comedy, but you sometimes do drama, then you can have two different reels. You can have a comedy reel and a drama reel. There's no harm in that. It gives us the casting director or producer, whoever's looking, it gives them the opportunity to pick what's relevant to them. And I would say always make sure that your credits are ordered, if you have enough of them to order them. So depending on how much work you've done, you know, if you've done, say, 10 pieces of theatre, but 18 films, we don't want to be having to kind of go, which is which. We want to see film, theatre, whichever order is up to you. We want to see them in their categories, because again, we're working with very limited time normally, so we want to go in and look at what is relevant to us rather than just the order that you did everything. So I would say those things are the things that are most likely to make us want to bring people in. And you know, and all casting directors are different because we're all different human beings. For me, it doesn't matter whether I've met someone before. I will obviously be more inclined to bring someone in that I've met whose work I think is good than someone I don't know, because again, we're a human being and there's already been a connection made. But I always bring in new people for every project, and a lot of us do that. I mean, I'm not, you know, this amazing altruistic saint, you know, we all do that because we want to find new people.
Of course.
And that's of interest, you know, to us. But all those things on your CV help us to make the choice to bring you in.
Okay.
But yeah, first and foremost, show reel. And then in terms of, you know, how you're described on your personal details, on your spotlight, for example, so you have like age range, height, weight, eye color, ethnicity. All of these things help. Again, where you're based, they all help if we're doing a search, for example. So not to do with if you've been suggested or submitted, but because we will also search for new ideas. One of my big bugbears is people saying they can play 16 to 30. Nobody
Quite
can.
Big age range.
But also nobody can do it. You can't play your teenage self. And, you know, depending on where you come from, I'm from the Midlands, so you could be your own grandma at 30, to be fair. You know, you can't be, you know, your teenage self and your adult self who could be your own mum convincingly. What we show as a 16-year-old is incredibly different. You know, you don't quite fit your own body until you've reached about 20. So how a teenager is to how somebody is who's over the age of, I would say, 28, because I think usually it's 28 when people go, oh, this is who I am. Okay. You know, and we have that understanding of who we are as a human. That looks very different in the eyes, in the way people carry themselves. The camera sees all of that. So I would say in terms of an age range, a few years either side of the age you think you look, because it might not be your own age. I know, you know, as an Italian, I know I look younger than my actual years. You know, I have friends a lot younger than me who have full grey hair, and I've got about 3 grey hairs, because that's just my genes. I also have a nose that's far larger than them, which I'd much rather swap. But, you know, that's just genetics. But, you know, if you look, say, for example, 10 years younger than your actual age, then 10 years younger is what your age range should be.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So just a real brutal look in the mirror of how old do I look? Because you look very young to me. So I would say, you know, in terms of performance, but, you know, for me, in terms of performance, I'd say probably around the 23 to 26 area in terms of an age range.
I'm going to take that because I turned 30 this year.
Well,
thank you.
All of you lays working wonders for all of us, clearly.
It is, yeah.
But, you know, but you don't look anywhere near 30. So in terms, or at least, you know, on Zoom you don't. So in terms of a 30-year-old role, I would be ignoring you.
Yeah.
Because I would think, well, she's ticked 23 to 30, but actually she's 24. You know, to me,
Brilliant. Yeah.
I don't think this is the you know, that businesswoman who's just come from this meeting who's about to do this. Whereas actually, I'm thinking she's the, you know, if the scene were a businesswoman and her assistant or associate, I'd be thinking that you were the younger character because you have a very youthful face. So again, it's knowing what that means, and if you've got a particular skill set, put it on there. If I don't know, if you're an equestrian or you do javelin, put it on there, and
Falconry.
asterisk it. Falconry,
Apparently,
yes.
Yeah.
Birds of prey, get them on there. But you know, if you're that good at something, put it on there, and asterisk it if you're fantastic at it. And the same with accents. You know, always put your native accent with an asterisk. Don't put standard English with an asterisk, because there's no such thing. You know, but if you believe that where you're from should be, you know, your particular town should be an asterisk, but also you're convincing in RP to the point where somebody would believe you were genuinely from Surrey, put an asterisk there as well, but don't asterisk all of them.
No,
you know, so those kind of things help us to decide to bring
There's
you
an
in.
interesting question around that though, Sharon, about people's ethnicities though, because
I was just about to ask that.
okay, then you asked the question, because Emma and I have had this conversation, being weird ethnic mongrels. Emma, ask away, because you have a challenge that's not quite mine, but similar ballpark.
So basically, my family, my mum's side of the family is sort of from the Middle East, so Egypt and Syria, and then my dad's side are from sort of more Eastern European, and so I am this weird sort of kind of mongrel kind of
nice mix.
Yeah. Nice mix. I call it a pie chart of weird and wonderful ethnicities. So I sometimes I find it really hard to know what box I sort of fit into. And also, one friend brought up to me that I basically just have as my stage name my given name, and which is actually, my surname is a made up surname, because my dad's original surname was Polish, but no one could pronounce it, so my grandfather took my dad's mum's first name, which was Golder, and added ing on the end.
Okay.
Everyone could pronounce that. So basically all of my family have these very amazing sort of ethnic names, but mine is not. And I also wondered how much that plays into me getting seen for the more Middle Eastern parts, because I actually get seen for a lot of Spanish, like quite regularly, and I do speak Spanish, not as well as Ashley, but so I feel like I'm falling in between these cracks, and I don't know what it is.
And it is a difficult one, and I think if anybody says it's not difficult, they're telling fibs. I think nowadays thankfully there's a climate that has been pushing for, you know, inclusivity and diversity and representation, which is incredibly important. I would say in terms of boxes to tick on your CV, because of course you have to tick them for us to see you, then I would tick white, Middle Eastern, mixed race, Mediterranean.
Okay, I've definitely got, I don't think I have mixed race, but I have the others.
But you see, but you are, aren't you? Because you're telling me that that culturally you have, you know, your dad is from Egypt. And sorry, was your dad that was from Egypt?
No, my actual parents were born in England, but then their families were all from all over the world. I have no idea how they all met, to be honest. It's very I don't know how that all happened, but they all ended up in the UK, and I was born. It is. And I don't know whether my name is it because it sounds quite English, I guess.
It does, yeah. I mean, it does. To be fair, we all make assumptions when we look at people, which of course we shouldn't, but we do. It's human nature. So I, on first looking at you, made an assumption as to your heritage, which we shouldn't do, but again, we do. I've assumed that you have Middle Eastern on one side, but because of your surname, I've made an assumption that maybe it was, you know, maybe you had a gran or a granddad, because your surname's very English. I'd say it wouldn't do you any harm to use the previous family name.
Okay.
You know, in that, but you know, and but again, that's just my perspective.
Yeah.
Because it helps people. I'm trying to think what the right word is. People categorize, and although we're trying to be inclusive and diverse, but people do by nature categorize. So if you're trying to say, but hang on a minute, you're missing that I fit into these categories, you need to flag up those categories, especially if, as you say, you're being seen for roles that are Spanish.
Yeah.
You know, so
when you're not Spanish as well.
I'm
That's
not
the
even
thing.
Spanish.
Yeah.
It's amazing because, like, you know.
But that's where the dichotomy is, though, because there's the appearance of somebody and what they look like in terms of what we think someone from that part of the world looks like and what they actually are. Because I'm half Iranian, and unless I told you that, you wouldn't think that, maybe aside from my surname, because I don't look like what people think an Iranian looks like, although what people think Iranian looks like is not what they actually look like either. Like, it's not all beard and crazy, you know, people want to chop off your hands.
Well, I was thinking that Emma looked most likely like she had an Iranian parent. Because my experience of who I've met, where one parent is Iranian and one parent is white British, you know, as opposed to somewhere else, have your skin tone, have the shape of your eyes, you know, have your colour hair. You know what I mean?
Yeah, very dark hair. Yeah. Because I guess I do fall because, well, really, because my grandpa was a full-blooded Egyptian man, but he wasn't. I wouldn't say that he was a dark Egyptian man. He had probably more Mediterranean skin than sort of brown skin necessarily. So like my family are a very weird hybrid of skin tones and hair color. Like my mum's grandma was ginger, so I have two cousins. I have three cousins, and their parents look like exactly like me, black hair. The first two kids that they had were ginger, and then their third daughter, Rosie, who was born, she looks like Pocahontas. So it's the most strangest mix of, and they're all from the same family.
Yeah, it's wonderful. But we find that in families, don't we? I mean, I was blonde as a child. Obviously, this is out of a bottle, but you know, nowadays. But as a child, I was blonde. I had blue eyes. They're not blue anymore. My sister has black hair and grey-green eyes. My brother had brown hair and brown eyes.
Wow, yeah.
We've got different coloured skin tone. I'm practically jaundiced and they've got red undertones, you know. My dad, within 2 minutes of being out in the sun, he looks like mahogany.
Wow, yeah.
Because he's from the south of Italy. My mum is from the north and she's the colour of Dulux white emulsion.
It's the same with my mum.
But she's got very dark hair, you know. We've all got that within families, haven't we? The hard thing with, you know, with trying to be represented in the arts and on camera, especially more so than in theatre, is having to flag. Which, you know, you shouldn't have to flag. We should just be, you know, seeing everybody, because I think, but it's a very good thing that we've had Act for Change and, you know, and all of these initiatives trying to push, because you've got a primarily white set of creatives making decisions about who people look like, and it's not always true. So like you know, like you, Ash, like you were saying, you know, we wouldn't know that your heritage on one side is Iranian. No, you know, we wouldn't. I would have just assumed European. Do you know what I mean? It's an assumption,
which is pretty broad, Sharon, in of itself.
No, it is in the same way that I've got generic European face, you know, I've got generic Mediterranean face. But there are so many people in positions of power within the industry who don't have any experience, that it can feel, and for me, as you know, as a white person, it can feel sometimes that people are being pushed into boxes, which isn't appropriate. So I can only, you know, make assumptions as to how it feels for people whose actual heritage is being questioned, you know.
I think it's just the confusion of, do we, like, should I talk about it? Should I not? Should I reference it? You know, and I think maybe more so for you, Em, I don't want to put the words in your mouth, but because you're sort of seen as Spanish, but you're not Spanish and you don't speak Spanish, but you could pass as these other things, but no one sees you that way. It's almost like, how much do you need to flag it, or just be authentic with who you are? And I don't know if that's a head scratcher of a question.
Yeah.
It is, and that's why I think you have to tick all of those boxes.
Yeah. And do you
because
do that with
you
your
have all of
name?
that. Yeah, I mean, I
Yeah.
honestly, I think if you know, especially if you're trying to be seen for a production, say that where it's set in the Middle East, for example,
Yeah.
and your name comes up, Emma Golding, they're going to think, why is this agent suggested somebody Spanish?
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Because you're saying, but I'm being seen for Spaniards.
Yeah.
So
I really do. Yeah.
Yeah.
Great, but
Yeah.
I suppose it's also the conversation with the agent, right? Like a good agent will
Yes.
have that conversation with them and say, no, like this is her name, but in the notes, like actually,
yeah,
such and such. Because I get seen for
Absolutely.
Spanish, which I should do, but my surname is not Spanish.
Yeah.
So I think it takes my agent to say no, like he grew up in Spain, like
yeah,
I've not hit submit by mistake.
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah. Which is important, because sometimes people do hit submit by mistake. And yeah, you don't want to be that, you don't want assumptions made. But yeah, Ashley's right, a conversation with your agent. And I would say if it's something that you feel is important to you and your identity, then that ultimately has to rest with you.
yeah.
I have an actress friend who's changed her name, I think, twice now.
Okay.
And it hasn't hurt her career. Do you know what I mean? It and obviously it's up to you, because it's integral to your identity. But if that's something that you feel you would want to do, then don't feel that you can't, just because you've been trading as for
Yeah, that was my sort of last question would have been that is that an okay? I mean, I've only sort of been graduated from when I went to drama school eight-ish years now.
Yeah.
But I mean, does it matter?
No, honestly, well, for me personally, I don't think it does, because I've seen actors where, and I keep copious notes on who I've met, and I've seen people where they've come up on a search and I was like, hang on a minute, but isn't that, oh, they look extraordinarily like this other actor. And I thought, I've had another look at their picture. I'm like, no, that is exactly what I thought. They've changed their name. And I don't sit around thinking, well, why have they changed their name? Well, this is terrible. There could be many reasons why somebody changes a name. And if you're wanting to be seen for more stuff, that's a valid reason. It could also be, sometimes I know people who have changed their name because a very dear family member has passed. And it's a mark of respect to that person. There's no, we can't sit and judge that and say, but your name was Golding. I can only see you as Golding. Why are we fixating on your surname?
Yeah, no, that's very, very true.
Yeah.
I guess it's something that a few people have told me about or spoken to me about, and I've sort of gone, oh, is that going to be really complicated? Well, not that I've, famous or anything, but will anyone who I've ever met sort of casting wise know who I am if I change my name? But I suppose my face is the same. So
face is the same, and also it can always come up in conversation, but I mean,
yeah,
and people won't necessarily ask, because sometimes, especially often women change their name if they get married.
Yeah.
Not everybody does, and you don't have to, but often people do, including sometimes their professional stage name. It has been done. So it's entirely up to you, because that's part of your marketing, it's part of your branding, it's part of what represents you to get you through the door. So that has to be what sits right with you. And tick as many of those boxes as you can so that you come up on searches. Do you speak any other languages or just English?
So English and sort of, I wouldn't say I'm fluent anywhere near in Spanish, but sort of conversation.
Okay. So
which is another reason why I get seen.
I was going to say that's probably one of the reasons, because you come upon those language.
Trying to learn things like Arabic and like Hebrew, because I have a lot of family who live in Israel as well, and it's like their whole new alphabets.
Yeah.
Quite complicated.
It's a tall order to try and learn them, but I would say if you're gifted linguistically, then actually that can open a lot of doors.
Yeah.
Because on Spotlight you don't want to put a language that you're not really able to speak. We've come into problems before where we've, on various productions, you see people who are cast who said that they were fluent in a particular language, and you've cast them in this role and then the script comes in and it's all in that language and they can't actually do it, or vice versa, their lines have all been written in English, but the production has assumed they can translate them into this other language, and they're going, you're actually going to have to get a translator,
Right.
you know, because people have different levels of skill. You know, my parents are Italian, and I can understand everything if we, you know, if we're together and we watch something on Italian TV, but I find it very difficult to phrase a sentence in Italian that's not embarrassingly inaccurate, but I can understand it all. You know what I mean? So if I were an actor, I wouldn't be able to put it down because I can't actually speak it properly, even though I can sit in a room full of native Italians, not plastic ones like me, and understand what's going on, you know. But if you're gifted linguistically, do try, because I think the more you can have up your sleeve as an actor, the more skills you've got that sets you apart. It's another reason that you'll be seen for something, you know.
Okay, thank you so much. This has been really, really helpful.
You're welcome. I hope that was okay. I'm very aware I'm sat here as the very Caucasian going, now what do I think about you and your ethnicity?
To be fair though, I think this is why I've been taken so surprised by people telling me I should change my name, because I always thought of myself as English. So it's actually in recent years, I mean, I went to a school where everyone was blonde, so that probably didn't help. I was always the odd one out, but like, for me, I'm slowly beginning to realize that actually my face is more ethnic than I thought it was, but I'm sort of not super ethnic. I don't even know what that means anymore, but you know what I mean? Like, I'm only now beginning to realize I actually do have something a bit different, and I can't ever put my finger on what that is.
No, but I would say as an actor, use it all.
Yes.
Use everything that makes you a little bit different. Because also, you know, that comes into all of your performances as well, you know, because we're all made up of what we are, which is countless things. Was as a human, you've got all these different facets to your personality and all these different experiences that have shaped you to be the person that you are. Use it all.
That's true. It's so true. It's so true. Thank you so much.
No,
This
you're
is
very
really,
welcome.
really helpful. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks for coming on, and the next time I see you, you'll have a different name.
Yeah. I've got so many to pick from. I don't even know which one to choose now. It's so, but thank you.
Pick it out of a hat.
I know. Put all the family names in a hat.
Exactly.
Have a good rest of your day.
You too.
Thank you very much, and you.
Bye.
Bye. It's always a fun conversation around ethnicities because it's a weird line to tread, especially in the climate culturally.
It does. I'm very aware of as well that I sit here as, you know, as the Caucasian, you know, thinking, where is it appropriate for me to, you know, to do that? Because my cultural background is different. My experience is different, you know.
I think it's that we put too much credence on it in some ways as well. It's sort of, there's a balance where there needs to be one extreme or the other is too much, but there's a middle ground, I think, that we need to find where the conversation has to be had, but also I think the point was we know we need the labels, but we don't know how to use them, if that makes sense.
No, it does.
And then also playing the game, because it is a business and it's kind of going, okay, well, I am all these things culturally, but actually being pragmatic, I'm only going to be seen as this or this, and let me hone in on that, because
you want to be seen and you want to be working.
There's that too. Like, again, I wouldn't be seen for, I had 2 auditions in my life as an Iranian, and everything else is American or Spanish, because that's it makes more sense. That's how I look, that's how I'm perceived. And so it's an easier pitch then, but do you know his surname's different? And so you could go and, like, it's also visually, I guess, just, do you look like you're from that part of the world?
And that has such an impact. I mean, you know, I've heard actors, you know, talk about coming in for a role and then being told that they're not X enough. Whatever the thing is, and
it's like, what does that mean? Based on whose criteria?
It's horrible.
It's such a subjective industry anyway, that it's one person's opinion is an opinion. I mean, I have been told before with one of the Iranian auditions, just do generic Middle Eastern accent and keep it a little like, and I understand. I do get it because I know it for an audience. They
Yeah.
know the difference, but it's kind of also like
There's no such thing.
I don't know what.
Yeah.
Or like you're doing a Spanish accent, but can you dial it down? Do you want authentic Spanish or do you want?
Yeah. COD.
Or yeah, exactly. Or do you want generic European with like a bit
Yeah.
of a lisp?
I know, if those things are often frustrating. I mean, and we see it all. It's whatever it is that's affected us personally, isn't it? I mean, I see. I've worked on loads of things, in the past where they've been set in the Midlands or the North, and they say generic Northern, and it makes my blood boil because there's no such place as generic North. So you can't have a generic Northern accent.
Sure.
And the same, like you say, generic Middle Eastern, but there is no generic Middle East. There's various countries. There is no generic European because there's all these different countries, even within, like Spain, even within Spain, it's a huge country, you've got all these different accents. Sure. and differences in language, but
it's what makes it fun and interesting though. And to your point, to Emma, it's almost, I think having the fortune of having multiple aspects to your character and personality just gives you a little bit more to play with as a person and then as a performer too, because ultimately the acting is what we're here to talk about on the podcast, but it is kind of secondary, like we're humans first.
Well, this is it. And we're bringing you guys in as actors, but we're bringing a human in to to see what you do with a role. It's such a bizarre industry that we work in, all of this make-believe that we're trying to create, and but it's human connections at the end of the day, isn't it? So we're bringing in a fellow human being to see what connections they've made to this material, and as a casting director, we're trying to facilitate all of that and help that come through for the directors and the producers.
And you're gauging, obviously, first and foremost, performance. Do they solve the issue I have with this role in this big piece? But personality has to be, I'm assuming, a huge part as well, right? I mean, I know it's varied from different people that I've spoken with, but what's your take on, you've got two people, one's performance is incredible, but maybe the personality comes across potentially questionable. You know where I'm going with this. And then on the flip, someone else has got just a solid performance. It's not, too much either way, but personality wise, they'll click with that team. I don't know if there's a one rule of thumb for all kind of approach to that situation, but
it depends on the production.
Right.
And also with the director and producer, if the one who has done this, kind of stellar performance, but you think might be tricky on set or have other issues that come with them,
sure.
It depends how much of that they can not tolerate, that's not the right word I'm looking for, but work with.
Sure.
Because if you've got a very tight budget, you don't really have the time or the resources to deal with someone who, for example, upsets other members of cast or crew, or has problems that they bring in with them, like a messy relationship or a nasty drug habit. What people do outside in their own life is up to them, but if it's something that can affect their workload and you're there to work with them, you might have a producer and director that will go, they were great, but oof, red flags.
Sure.
And we're all in that together. And I, in all honesty, I'll put my hand up and say I have had auditions where we've had people and we've all felt it. We've felt that bristle, and you thought there is no way you're going to have a cohesive set.
Right.
And you need a cohesive set to make the work, because otherwise you end up with an actor who's acting at the other actors, not with the other actors, and that doesn't work on film. You can, or well, for film, but on screen, on film or TV, you can see it if somebody is acting at the other actors in their scene. So for me personally, I would be hedging towards the person that everything comes together, they're a good performer, it's solid, they take direction, and as a human being they want to work on this and work with you and create this vision.
Sure. Because it's a collaboration across the
It
board,
is.
really, you know,
We're
everyone.
all collaborating. Yeah, you know, everybody's collaborating. The directors collaborate with the actors to get the performance that they want, you know, for their vision. But usually directors are open enough to kind of watch somebody's performance and say, that's a really interesting element. Let's work with that, as opposed to this was rigidly what I want.
Absolutely.
You know?
Mindful of your time and letting you enjoy the rest of your day. But just to quickly, before we do wrap it up, I wanted to touch on maybe the book really quickly and just talk a little bit about sort of how that came to pass, and then a little bit about, I guess, what's in there and any advice that you've put in it that people might want to touch on. Am I right in saying that you were sort of pitched or approached to sort of have it written and made, and it sort of
Kind of, yeah. I had actually, I'll try and be brief. I know I can talk the hind legs off a donkey, but I'll try and be brief. So I had left casting for a little while and was working with my sister and doing some marketing.
right.
And one of our clients was a bespoke publisher, indie publisher, and they had this series of interviews that were on CD, and they were advice for actors from various, you know, the people that are interviewed in the book, but various actors, directors, casting directors, etc. And they were very interesting interviews, but they sometimes were quite long. So, you know, if you start talking to somebody and it becomes very anecdotal, the actual advice kind of gets lost amongst and then me and Larry, blah, 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 you know. And although they were all wonderful stories, but we were kind of, you know, brought on to this project, and my sister and I worked through and kind of said, you know, we need to distill the actual advice, take it away from the anecdotes, which are wonderful. And if you've got time to listen to to these whole interviews, they are wonderful interviews. So not to discredit those in any way, they are wonderful. They're great to listen to. But if you want a how-to, if you want just, you know, this, it needs to be distilled. And the best way to do that is to write it out, basically, make it into a book. And we know, and then the publishers commissioned me to do it because of my background in casting. And I was like, aha, I feel this circle happening.
Yeah.
So I did. It was quite an interesting process because, you know, I write creatively, but you know, who thinks that they're going to write a textbook? You know, it's not something you go, I know what I want to do. And so we did that, working with the publisher and using those original interviews, and then I interviewed a few other people just to kind of balance out for the book. And I hope it's helpful. It's a pragmatic guide because, you know, we all know it's an art. We've all come into this industry to make art, whether it's on screen or on the stage. You know, we're all creative souls. However, it is a business, and sometimes actors forget that, and it doesn't help them, you know, in their career. There needs to be some level of pragmatism, which is why, you know, that the chapters are broken down. We don't even cover the actual audition and preparing for the audition until, you know, chapter 4. Chapters 1, 2, and 3 are breaking down the industry and then how you market yourself, because you have to do all of that before you get the audition, usually, you know. And then there's how you break down scripts, you know, how you prepare, and then, you know, another one on the actual day of the audition, what you need to be doing. I've got one later on that's for collaborative work, because nowadays so many actors also want to write and direct, and so actually you can be having these wonderful collaborations that are on the kind of indie side, because not everybody is going to get a commission from Netflix, you know, in real terms, unless you've been very fortunate. You're probably going to be doing short films, building up this, you know, portfolio of your creative offerings while still being an actor. So there's a section on that as well, because the original interviews were absolutely lovely, but we felt that it had to be just a bit more pragmatic and digestible, and also set out into very specific chapters so that you could actually go, this is the bit that interests me today,
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to read the entire, you don't have to read the entire book as is in order.
Yeah, so it's for like the actor who maybe needs a little bit more insight into the business side of how to operate, and also we don't like to think of ourselves as a product or business. That is a huge part of it. And to your point, they can kind of dip into, right now in my career, this section, whatever, 7 on whatever is important to me, or let me go back to chapter 3 where we talk about mailing people. And
exactly, because maybe that's what you need to do. Maybe you're doing your best in your auditions, but you don't feel that you're getting the right kind. I also break down a few myths about casting and the difference between casting directors and agents, because people like to say casting agent, but there's no such thing. It's this very bizarre misnomer.
Do you find that's people out of the industry though?
No, actors as well, bizarrely, and lots of newspapers refer to as agents.
That's what I was thinking. More like in publications, I've seen casting agent all the time. Actors say casting agent.
Honestly, a lot of people will say blah 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 casting agent, and we'll go casting director, because you find very few people who do both jobs. There are a few, but most of us are one or the other.
It's very difficult to do both. Isn't there a conflict of interest too?
There can be a conflict of interest, because if you are casting a production but you also have actors who you take commission from, there could be the potential to want to favour them. So there can be a conflict of interest. I mean, I'm sure there are things in place for people, and the people who do it will say, okay, well, look, I know those are my clients. I'll only ever bring them in where it's absolutely relevant, but most of us will just do one or the other.
Yeah, it's not uncommon to have had someone who's been an agent and come into casting, or vice versa.
Yeah, and many started out as actors, or which is why I think so many of us like actors. There's a myth that casting directors don't like actors, and I really don't know where it comes from, because if we didn't like actors, we're in the wrong job.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that. I think just because the more people say it, the more it's sort of reaffirmed for people that maybe tune into this, because you're not the first. Most people, when they come on in some capacity, say what you said. Either we're not against you, we're rooting for you, we're not the gatekeeper, like whatever it might be. But there is this odd perception. Where do you think that stems from?
I think some of it stems from people's insecurities, and so often when we're insecure or we felt rejected, we will project. So if you, for example, have been seen by a casting director for, I don't know, maybe 3 projects, and you didn't get them, and then you haven't been seen by them for another 10 years, you're going to think they are personally stopping you. And actually, it just might be that those other jobs that have come in haven't been appropriate. I've got plenty of actors where I've seen them for things 10 years ago, but I haven't brought them in since because they weren't right. And I have a very open idea of roles, but if they if they're the wrong age range, I can't change that. Or if they feel a particular way, not every actor will be believed in every single role. So
even though we like to think we can be.
Yeah, and you would offer something different, but some people, the minute the camera looks at them, they kind of come across as hench, this is the bad guy or whatever, and some feel very sympathetic and sensitive, so you're less likely to swap them round for for a role type. But I think that's what it is. I think it comes from this projection because of past rejection. And the gatekeeper analogy is quite a nice one, because we're really not stopping the gates. We can only bring in so many people for a role. There are over 60,000 people on Spotlight alone, so there are a lot of actors. We can't possibly see everybody for the role, so we have to filter out. Also, you've got directors and producers who will have a very specific idea sometimes. So with the best will in the world, I might want to bring in a particular group of actors, and then I meet the director and producer again, to talk further on a role, and I realize there's no way that they want to work with those actors having just heard how they see the role, or what they kind of want from the actor. So I'm left going, okay, I'm not seeing them. Okay, and we have another think, but we bring people in because we believe they can get there. We never put people in as filler. That's another myth as well. If you get a last minute casting casting that you've been put in as filler. The reason we don't put people in as filler is, what if that person who wasn't right, who we didn't believe in, got the job? I mean, just on a practical level,
Sure.
we have to believe in the work that we're doing as well, you know, so we wouldn't do that. But sometimes we get asked, you know, we think we're going to do a session next Wednesday, and then suddenly we're told, actually, you know, the director has to move a recce for a particular location, so actually, can we do it tomorrow? Okay. You know, suddenly it's public stations, and then it's all everything for tomorrow. And so you might get that last minute thing. It doesn't mean that you're at the bottom of a list either if you're getting a call at 5 o'clock, because we might have got the call at 4:30.
Sure. Yeah.
You know, but I can understand why, as an actor, you might be told, hang on, I've got a meeting tomorrow and I've got all this to prepare. Well, you must have known these meetings were happening. I must be at the end of a B list, not even the A list that you want to bring. I must be at the end of a B or C list if I'm getting this call now, or someone else has dropped out, but it's not necessarily any of those things. And most of us will set up the room so that we hope everybody in the room feels comfortable. We make sure that we've given as much information as we can to the actors, again, to make them comfortable and secure when they come in. That's because we like actors, you know. and we honestly, we wouldn't be doing the job if we didn't.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense. Why would you spend time with people? I mean, you know, if you wanted to do something you hate, you'd pick a profession in some other industry and just do that anyway,
that
right?
was more secure, you know.
Well, used to be more secure, maybe not these days with the world we're in.
Well, yes, that's true.
Amazing. Sharon, I like to wrap this up with quick 10 questions that I've stolen, like all good artists do, from inside the actor's studio. So the questions, if you've I'm sure you've watched the show, the questions James Lipton would ask at the end, I basically swipe them and ask them. So whatever comes to mind. The first one is, what is your favorite word?
Oh gosh, my favorite word. Surreptitiously.
Ooh. First time anyone said that. I'm going to caveat that and say as well, you can say this can be English or Italian if you want to.
Oh, bless you.
I'll
give you the Italian one, stracciatella.
Is that the same thing in Italian?
No, it's a type of ice cream that's it's got chips of chocolate and it's just the cream. So it's very, very white with these little chips of chocolate.
What is your least favorite word?
God, I think probably one that most women will say is, I hate the word moist.
Okay, I'm not going to pull on that thread. We'll just take a moment. Okay. Next question is, what turns you on creatively, intellectually, spiritually?
Oh gosh, that one's really hard. I think for all of those, my intellect has to be connected. So creatively, if I'm reading something, it has to be, or at least I have to think that it's intelligent. And spiritually is a hard one because I'm not sure I'm that spiritual a person. I mean, I talk about energies and how people present, but I'm not somebody of a particular faith or religion, so I don't know. But I think kindness, honesty, honor, intelligence, those things will all work for me. And they're what that's what I seek out. I certainly seek out, you know, when I'm casting intelligent actors who work well with other people. So that kind of generosity. So those things I think are what draws me.
Totally. On the flip side, then, what turns you off?
Arrogance. I hate arrogance. I know sometimes it's actually insecurity manifesting itself that way, but there's also sometimes it's just arrogance and narcissism.
Sure.
Yeah, those are real turn-offs.
Especially when you want to be collaborative, you know.
Yes, yeah, and any kind of bullying, I cannot abide bullying. You know, in any forum. So when you see people who will, in order to feel better, will pull other people down, I just have a very low tolerance for that.
Sure. Fifth question is, optional because it's what's your favorite swear word. So if you don't want to swear on camera, that's fine. I don't care because I swear like a chimney. If you want to do it in Italian, that's also an option.
Oh, do I? No. I would say it's probably the same letters as French Connection UK. That's certainly the one I use the most.
Fair enough. Fair enough. That's most people's
Yeah.
kind of ballpark. Next question is, what is your favorite sound or noise?
Oh.
Was that it?
Oh no, that was me thinking. Sorry, no, that was definitely not it. That's definitely not it. I don't want to waste it on that one. Wow, it's probably prosecco being poured.
Okay.
Or kettle being poured, because a cup of tea is my drink of preference. It's the drink of the gods, after all.
Gotcha.
Yeah, actually, it's probably the kettle in making a cuppa, and then prosecco second.
Fair enough. It's almost like one's for the night before and one's for the morning after. And I'll let people decide which is which.
Absolutely.
What's your least favorite sound or noise?
God, there's so many. I particularly don't like, you get those large vehicles that keep beeping and telling you that this vehicle is reversing. I find that quite grating.
Yeah.
And
that's good enough as it is, to be fair.
Yeah, that one. Although I do also, as a proud Midlandser,
right.
I do find a southern R in the words afternoon, grass, path quite annoying.
Right.
Which I shouldn't say, but I do.
Fair enough. It's just you just being honest.
Yeah.
Almost there. Final few. So the next one is, what job or profession other than your own, or maybe any you've attempted, would you most like to try?
That's a difficult one. I mean, I think, if suddenly I was bequeathed a lot of money because, I'd won the lottery, I would still be in the industry, but I think I'd probably be creating content. So maybe I would be writing and directing, and obviously still casting because you're so involved, but probably, if I suddenly was independently wealthy, perhaps writing and directing.
Cool. What job or profession would you never want to attempt?
Working in an abattoir or Tory councillor. I don't know, they're kind of up there.
Yep. Final question, a little bit more ethereal, I suppose. When it's all said and done, what would you like the story of your life to be? What kind of legacy would you like to leave behind?
I think, generally speaking, I'm a kind, generous person. So I guess I would want to leave behind a trail of kindness, if possible. I like to help where I can. I like to be a good friend, a good ear. I think actually in our job, when things work well, we give people this break into this particular industry. So that's always very satisfying, if when it all goes into place and you've managed to cast the people that you want to. So I think that trade of kindness, I think.
Awesome. Sharon, it's been great chatting to you. I guess last moment to you, really, if there's any kind of final message or final point you want to leave people with, and if they can connect with you online, anywhere where that might be, if they want to, just let them know where they can do that.
Sure. Well, my email is listed on my website. I mean, it's also on, there's a link to my website from Twitter. And so for the book, I also have a Twitter account for the book that tweets out advice for actors. And that's the Audition Room.
Okay.
So it's just, that's the tag.
Cool. I'll put the links in the description.
Yeah. So that tweets out, because my own Twitter tends to be me grumbling politically, and the occasional "do watch this thing, it's amazing," and then another grumble, which I'm sure I shouldn't do on Twitter, but I do.
I think everybody's doing it now. You're okay. You're fine.
We do. We all have a little rant here and there. But yeah, in terms of being contacted, I'm quite happy to be emailed. I prefer not to be phoned.
Yeah.
But
understandably.
Yeah, and you know, as I was saying to Sean earlier, you know, I read everything, not necessarily at the time. I am still on maternity. I've got a tiny little one who's being very patient out there.
I heard a little mumbling.
He did have a little moan, yes. So you know, I don't necessarily answer things straight away, but I do look at everything that's, you know, that's sent to me. So yeah, so that's absolutely fine. Contacting on, you know, by email.
Great.
All good.
Great. And any kind of final message for people tuning in? Any kind of sort of through line from this whole chat that you think is a good takeaway?
I think maybe, you know, don't be disheartened. I know we're all in this pandemic together. It's affecting everybody, and our industry has been particularly, you know, hard hit, and it feels like it's been decimated. But you know, things are still starting to happen slowly but surely, and we'll have more of an idea of what's happening next year. So hang in there, and if you've had to go and do something else in the meantime, don't beat yourself up. We all have to put food on the table. So, you know, actors often have to have a second career anyway for when they're resting. Don't think that makes you any less of an actor. It doesn't. It means that you have to eat and you have to pay your rent or your mortgage. So don't lose hope, I think.